Oh, there you go.
Oh yeah.
I did not. Are we recording?
Yeah, we're on.
Okay,
now.
so I didn't go to our
Everything's on.
little local joint yet.
Still
Nothing against it. I just haven't.
everything against it. You said you don't like it.
Well,
Like I've never liked it when I went there. Let's go try it out.
well, I'm going to. I am going to try it out.
I appreciate the size town we live in. Anybody trying to have a cigar shop, I appreciate.
Well, they sell them internationally too. So
Should have done that over the ashtray. Okay, though.
So I am smoking a Cruise Epicure. First time gold band. Connecticut.
Roma de Cuba, courtesy of Kyle.
Courtesy of you.
Go back a couple.
Go back a couple episodes and we'll see. Do you have your paperweight?
I do. Had a near-death experience this week. Which I think is a funny thing to say, because anytime you have a near-death experience, you feel like you're overplaying it, you know? Like, oh, would I really have died?
Yes.
But then, like, if you think about it, you're like, yeah. And other people are like, yeah, that happened to my friend and they died. So this...
Wait, hold on. Someone said that happened to my friend and they died?
Across the street.
Oh, no.
Right over here across the street. They had a friend, one of these bad boys, which is a tow hook for tying down heavy equipment, came through the windshield and killed somebody. This one came through the windshield on the passenger side of my truck. Went through the windshield, over the top. I don't think it hit the front seat because it hit the back seat hard enough to rip the headrest of the back seat.
Oh.
So I don't think it, but it did embed glass into the front seat that I haven't been able to get out yet. You just never know.
How heavy is that thing? A couple pounds?
It's heavy. Yeah, it weighs.
How fast were you going?
I was only going about 60 miles an hour because I was towing the boat coming back from the lake.
Your family was not with you.
They were not with me. They wanted to ride with me. And I was frustrated from loading the boat back up. So I was like, y'all go with your mom. Well, plus I had to go put the boat up and put the covers on and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
It's late at night. They need
Yeah.
baths. It's school night. It was like Thursday night. So I have that little concert series here. So we went to that. And, yeah. So
Well, we've discovered that we're not a geology or a meteorology podcast. So physics of it. We're going 60. That thing's going 60. Woo!
So there wasn't any heavy equipment in front of me. Like there wasn't like a trailer or something that it fell off of right away. So it had been on the road. There wasn't much traffic on the road at all, but the only thing in front of me was a Dodge Challenger. And, you know, I was going 55 or 60. They might have been going 70. So, also physics-wise, I don't know if a Dodge Challenger is going 70 miles an hour, how fast their rear tires are spinning. Faster than that.
Yeah.
But
That's terrifying.
physics nerds, let us know.
Final Destination type
Should text your dad.
kind of stuff. he would geek out on that. But he would geek out on that a lot. So we're at the end of the year, and there is just so much stuff. There's just so much stuff going on, and I know, like, obviously, I'm full bar. Is there a way to tighten? Or,
You gotta spin it. Which means
Okay.
you gotta unplug them.
yeah, I'm not doing that. We'll fix it later. But like, there's just so much, like, end of year award ceremonies, field day. I'm going on a field trip tomorrow with a bunch of 5th grade girls. I'm legitimately excited about. But it's like,
So where?
we're going to the Rough Riders game.
Hey, that's fun.
Yeah,
That's a good field trip.
yeah. I've been to the Rough Riders before, but they're a minor league baseball team here that's affiliated Double A with the Rangers.
No double A ball.
from what I understand, there is a possibility that one of the major leaguers is making a start tomorrow, so that they could be recovered by the weekend.
I'd always feel like when you hit the lottery, watching double A ball, you know?
Yeah.
They send somebody down for a little bit.
I don't. Lamar Rocker, maybe?
I got to see Wyatt Langford.
Ah.
Yeah.
When he was there. Yeah, but like, I think that I'm not sure who's at fault in this.
So is Rocker pitching tomorrow then?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think he was questionable for a rehab start tomorrow.
Okay.
So I guess we'll find out when we get there. But apparently somebody from our district is throwing out the first pitch, so I'm kind of excited about it. I'm not going to lie. It's not me. I'm not throwing out the first pitch. But someone in our district is throwing out the pitch. But yeah, it's just so much stuff. It's so unbelievably busy. And then to throw in like Little League rainout games where you play 4 games in 5 days.
It's a lot for little kids.
And we are not a travel team. Mm-hmm. We are not a select team. We are just a everyday, normal rec team.
Just good old rec league.
Yes. And
playing 4 nights a week.
Well, and like our kids are not physically prepared for that or mentally prepared for that. They are just exhausted. We had a kid cry, multiple kids cry. And it's late. It's like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and we're finishing up a game. And these kids are not prepared for that.
I won't say parents agree. We got a notification. So our district does a camp for 5th graders. And so my son will be a 5th grader next year. And they go to camp for a week. The whole 5th grade. The last year in elementary school. Kind of a rite of passage thing. I'm sure a lot of other district does it. But they were going to camp next week. And so they sent out this email that said they had a mandatory meeting for this camp, blah, blah, for next year. It was at 9 a.m. on a weekday for parents to come to.
No way.
Yes. I feel like, and this is an idea you can drop in the suggestion box, but this happens so much that I think that when teachers do professional development in the summertime, because it's not their fault. If all you've ever done is be a teacher, I feel like you have to go through this professional development class in your summer PD that's somebody who's never been a teacher who like just talks to you about how real parents work.
Well, like the district that I work in, like today, I went to, I don't know, 1st grade, whatever, awards ceremony, right? Where everybody gets an award for everything, like the Computer Wizard Award, the Drew a Cute Fox Award.
I'll tell you the 2 that my son's got whenever you finish.
And it's like, how are all these people here?
I know.
Like, I literally had to have someone watch my class just to be able to go. And I'm like, I work a normal job. Teaching is normal. But it's like, how in the world?
It's harder for teachers to get away.
Yes, it is.
So that's why, like, with my job, I do all the doctor's appointment that are during we can't get them on a holiday or during the summer, I'm the one taking the kids to the doctor's appointment. If a kid is sick during the middle of the day, I'm the one that stays home. I'm the one that takes them because teachers don't get a lot of days off, and it's hard for them to take off during that time. So tonight we had kindergarten graduation. And at the very end, the principal of the school gets up to the front and she says, "Hey, everybody, I need you to make a deal with you. We're the only elementary school in the district that did an evening kindergarten graduation. Everyone else did theirs during the school day. So, but did you like that?" Everybody claps. And she said, "If you would prefer for next year a daytime kindergarten graduation," which doesn't apply to most of the parents in the room because they won't have kindergartners next year. We will because we have a pre-K right now. But she said, "Please stand up." Not a single person in the room stood up because you don't have to take off work for it. Like, it's a little bit of a rat race to come straight home and get them up there in their nice clothes and all that kind of stuff. Right. But it's a lot better than having to take off work and go in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that. But yeah, teachers, I'm sure, are tired of it. It is hard for you guys to get away, but parents are tired of it too.
Yeah. So I want to talk about graduation for a second.
Okay.
I don't know how much you remember your graduation. So I was thinking about this the other day because, I have a daughter graduating. And I was thinking, why do we have so many graduations? Like, why is kindergarten graduation a big deal? I know why used to be.
No, I don't like it at all.
But like I worked at a district that did 8th grade graduation.
Yes.
Now I know why they used to do that, because this was an old farming community and most of the kids didn't go to high school. Now, this is in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But most of the kids didn't graduate high school because they just had to go work on the farm. But if you live in an urban district, it's pretty much expected for you to go, like if you're not, I mean, even all kids now are expected to graduate high school. It's not the same as what it used to be. So I don't know why we have so many. Now, I get high school graduation. I understand that. But I don't know why we have kindergarten, 8th grade, elementary into secondary school. I don't understand. Because it just seems so foreign to me.
Yeah, I don't. Everybody makes a big deal about kindergarten. Not everybody. Most people make a big deal about kindergarten graduation. I personally don't believe in it. So it was fine. They had a good time.
Yeah, your kids, I'm sure your kids loved it. But yeah, it just seems like a lot. It just seems like a lot.
So for their awards, there are two. I have two of them. And so one of them got the Master Mathematician Award. So that's like, as a parent, you're like, okay.
Okay, especially for your profession.
Especially as I'm a CPA, I'm like, all right. Might have one of them follow me, maybe. And the other one got the Hippopotamus Award for humor.
Okay. Also, good award.
So I got a class clown and a mathematician. But he's not a class clown. I mean, he does have some behavior issues we have talked to his teacher about, but he just finds the funny in everything. So that's a good thing.
At least he didn't get the I'm a survivor or I'm a fighter
award. It was funny because you did see some of those kids coming up on stage to get their diploma, and those kindergarten teachers were like crying tears of joy. Like,
yes, please don't. Make sure you do not come back.
I have 3 more days with this kid, and then I'm done.
Yeah, it's an adventure for sure. I know that for us, it's at the high school. We're ready. We're ready for them to go.
Yeah,
sure. And it's just because the last 2 weeks specifically for seniors is hard because it's like they're ready to go too. They're ready to go, and it's like we're just trying to hold them there. So, the Stars are in the Western Conference Finals. And we called it.
We did.
Exactly how it happened.
I'm sure that's why it happened too.
I'm sure it is. So where we fall now? Are we the top seed left in the Western Conference, or the Oilers ahead of us?
You have to pull up a bracket.
I'll look while you talk.
But yeah, it was a good game. I was watching it. So Saturday night when they clinched it and won, they went to overtime, and I was able to watch regulation all through 3 periods. And then we had to change our location. We were out hanging out with some friends. And so I was like kind of watching on my phone when we left the restaurant we were at, and then had to, drive. So I turned it off. And, but it was like showing like the 12 minutes until the overtime period started. So I was like, okay, this is fine. We got time. But then as soon as I get there and as soon as overtime has started, I turn on my phone to pick it back up again, and it's 2-1, and they're out there hugging on the ice, and because hockey is sudden death. And so I asked some guys, and I didn't see the replay, but it didn't take long because they were finishing a power play.
Correct. But did you see the tripping call?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, before regulation ended. Yeah.
So I believe in a regular season game, not a playoff game, that's a penalty shot.
Yeah, everybody was saying that.
But the commentators made a great point that they had called the game the entire night in favor of letting the players play. Like there were very few penalties. I think there were only 2.
Yeah.
And so why change it in that moment?
Right.
So they got him for the hooking, not the tripping.
Especially in an elimination game, What's our Twitch saying to us?
Well, they're talking about something that happened at school. Yeah, the seniors are just ready to go. They tried to pull a prank and it didn't go over very well.
Do you do any senior pranks?
Me as in when I was in school?
Yes.
We tried.
You personally or your class?
We tried. So the class that was between us spray painted the school. Okay. I don't know if you remember that. But like they spray painted O2.
The class in between us, so after I graduated? No, I don't remember.
No. The one that was between, that was ahead of, like you were 01, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so 02. The class of 02.
I was disconnected.
I know, but I didn't know. It was in the newspaper.
Oh,
wow. I don't know if you read the Herald
I was
Banner.
a freshman in college reading this. Actually, I probably was.
I know, that's why I said that.
You got a point.
They spray painted the school. And so I just remember our principal at the time was like, guys, don't do anything. Just don't even come up here. Well, we got the bright idea to spray paint like a big 2 or 3 king size sheets and then sew them together.
Okay.
Or glue them together. So we were just going to attach it. You remember
I do remember this.
The high school had the thing at the top.
Yeah.
Well, we were going to just hang it over that. And they
took
told
down
us
the tower, yeah.
Yeah, they told us no. And so like the police officer came up and tried to arrest us. Oh, Officer Bailey. For those who are local Roy Cityans would know who I'm talking about. He tried to arrest us. Mr. Gant got us out of it. So then we went up to the shell.
What's interesting there, Officer Bailey, the current school where we went to high school is now a middle school named after his mom.
Yeah. So
small town fun.
And that's the school that we went to. And we ended up going up to Texco, which was owned by one of my classmates' grandfather, and he let us hang it off the side of off the Texco. So it ended up better probably because more people were going to see it because it was right off of 30, which is now the Shell in Roy City.
Right. We tried a few, but the thing about us was they knew you were going to try something the night before the last day of school. So that's when they were all up at the school not letting you do anything. Right. So we had picked a different day. So ours was the weekend before. So the Saturday night before the last week of school. That's when we were doing our stuff. Now, I was the first class to go all 4 years in this new building.
Right.
Before that, the old high school had a radio tower next to it. Every single senior class before that climbed to the top of that radio tower and hung a flag off of it. They all did it. That was all their thing. My sister did that. She was 4 years older than me in her class, and everybody before her and everybody after her did that. Okay. So with us, we always wanted to there was like this fake faux bell tower in front of our new high school, and we always wanted to hang stuff off. I guess
that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And nobody ever was able to get that done because they were always up at the school watching. So they had lots of different pranks planned, shoe polishing the windows, things like that, which that's all normal stuff. Ours was we were going to go paintball a bunch of signs and stuff. So we're not smart, but we all had this just past the school. There's this rock road that goes off diagonally to the right. You know exactly.
Yes,
you go over the hill. There's this rock road that goes off to the right, and that was our meeting spot because it's just over the top of a hill. So if the one police officer that was on duty that night happened to drive down the highway, they wouldn't see us because they're kind of hiding over the top of this hill. And so we were sitting there, and I mean, either somebody tipped us off or we were just dumb and he caught us. But I literally had pulled around the back of the school, and then here he comes. No lights or anything like that. He just pulls up next to me, gets out of his car, walks to my truck window, rolls it down. I have a case of paintballs and 2 paintball guns laying in the front seat of my truck. Not hiding anything. And he just looks at me and he goes, "No." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to head on home." And we regrouped and tried to change our plans, but I
mean, the problem now is there's video cameras literally everywhere.
Yeah.
So
and a lot more police officers working than
and if you try to do something like that, even if you're given permission, you're going to get caught or someone's going to do something stupid.
Yeah.
And not only their cameras, but they're filming the whole thing.
Yeah.
They film themselves.
Oh, right.
All the
Yeah, we
time.
didn't have any of that.
None of that happened. Well, I was going to actually text one of our classmates today and see if I was just going to see if she even had the pictures of the sheet that we hung, because they did put that in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Well, it was a big deal. So the Twitch says there was no penalties in the playoff game until the third period.
Yeah.
And we are the number 2 seed, and Edmonton is the number 3 seed.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that means we'll be home.
Mm-hmm.
So good for the Stars.
Yeah, I should have known that because we started. It's in Dallas on Wednesday.
Yes.
So then that would have given it away. So that'll be exciting. We need to beat them. Florida is taking care of Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And we took care of Winterpeg. And so now we need to take care of Edmonton. So we, again, will not have a Canadian team winning the Stanley Cup, which they have not done since 1993.
USA.
Listen, that's the only sport they have.
That's okay.
I know.
We beat them in everything else.
That's what I'm saying. That is literally every top athlete they have has to go into hockey. That is the only thing they produce. and they haven't been able to win in 32 years, the championship. And I know, think about this. The Cowboys have won a Super Bowl more recently than a Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup.
My Canadian friend is going to be very disappointed in this conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing.
We're
Look
just
at the camera.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay.
But I'll check. But I just want to say, like, Canadians, you guys can't win the Stanley Cup anymore as your own country. Just come on, be the 51st state, be a part of America, and you might have a shot again.
There we go. Maybe I can hit
Make the case.
I can hit it.
That's fun.
Yeah. The Twitch says keep the 51st staters out of this conversation.
Did you see, though? And there have been plenty of reels about it. And again, when we've talked about 51st state on the podcast, we've always said, like, okay, like, it's just all fun for us. But when PM Carney was in the Oval, he's like, Canada will never be, subject to the United States, or whatever he worded it. He didn't say 51st state, but he said it something like that. And Trump goes, his typical Trump, he goes, we'll see.
Yeah, I definitely don't think. I think that's one of those things that he says in tongue in cheek. Yeah. And then if we were to, again, have our miraculous board over here to the left of me, to the right of you, that would be probably never, like, in that 0.0001% chance that it ever happens.
Which, honestly...
But it's not zero.
It's not zero.
So we had a friend in the video today, and it made me think about another video I saw, and it was an AI video of Caitlin Clark talking about Angel Reese. And it was like, if you did not know anything about this video and you just watched it, you'd be like, wow, that's pretty crazy she said that. But then, like, when you're, like, actually watching it, it's very obvious that it's AI once you're paying attention. Like, but you have to really check in. Well, I was watching a video the other day, and it was like a real deal Fox News on the ticker at the very bottom, and it was the interview with Kash Patel, because he did an interview with Fox News, did an interview with Kash Patel. And, like, I'm listening to it, and I'm thinking, man, this is kind of, like, really out there for even Patel. Like, this is out. And then at the very end of, like, a 2.5-minute video, it's like, this was generated by AI.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, if I hadn't paid attention, I would have been
if they don't put the
sending my
disclaimer
money.
at the end.
Yeah, I would have been sending my money to an African prince. I feel like that,
It's very good, and it's only going to get better. And so the question becomes, like, how are you going to know someday?
I don't know. And I don't know how we made fun of the Texas guy that did this, that had this out as like a political ploy, but I kind of almost think that, like, a disclaimer is okay. Mm-hmm. Like, I like satire. I think it's hilarious. I think it's funny. I love it.
Right.
But when you have the director of the FBI and his mouth is moving and it is his voice.
You can make anybody sound like they're saying anything.
Yeah.
It used to be the stuff of movies. You would have that, those, apocalyptic movies where somebody calls in and you think it's their voice,
right. Right.
Now it's reality. So I don't know how you defend against that.
The Twitch says everyone will have a unique digital signature of some sort, but I think of Inception. Did you ever watch that movie where their dreams and they can't ever determine what's real and what's not, and so they spin they have their die or whatever it was. By the way, great movie. If you haven't ever seen it, check it out. Leonardo DiCaprio's fantastic in it. But he spins his, like, top, and if the top doesn't fall over, he knows he's in a dream. So I wonder if what that looks like. But also, Biden, our old friend Biden.
I just want to say, for everything I'm about to say about this whole story, I don't have any problem with Joe Biden. I have a problem with the people around him. He tried to say that he could run for president again and be president because his own former, some people may not know, we are a current events podcast as well. It was released today that he has very late stage cancer that's metastasized, and it's not good at all.
In his bones.
And it's metastasized in his bones. It is not good at all. And so all of the, regardless of what we think about politically, like, no one wants anyone to go through that. No one wants anyone's family to go through that. And my problem hearing this story and thinking through it is not anything to do with Joe Biden, but it's everything to do with his wife, Jill, and those around him that were trying to get him to run again just to stay in power. Or, more sinister and cynical view, is just as long as he wins, and if he passes away soon, then Kamala Harris becomes president. And maybe that is the cards that were struck at the beginning of the campaign when they were deciding if he would run again, is they wanted her as the president, and they thought their best chance was for him to beat Trump. And then if he either has to step down or resign or passes away in office, she becomes president that way. And they thought, this is a very cynical view. I understand. Like, this is speculating and everything. It's a very cynical view, but that was their chance rather than her beating Trump outright.
Yeah.
And just to put somebody through that. Because
his
own medical,
it's evil. It's evil.
His own medical advisor, either his first or his last name is Emmanuel. I didn't write it down. I'm sorry, but Dr. Emmanuel said that he likely had this before his last term began. This is something you've had for years for it to be this far advanced. Well, it's not something he got in less than 100 to 200 days with his exact quote. Yeah.
Well, and I read that today that he has the one that will respond to hormone treatment. So that means that he has been taking treatment, which I'm not a doctor. So it's here's the problem with politics.
Let's speculate that on the podcast as well.
Right. You see what I'm saying?
We're just talking.
But this is what makes politics and when you're dealing with other humans so difficult. Right? And when you're talking about what people knew or what they didn't know, that's where I have an issue. Because there's a lot of things that come... Oh, what did you just post that guy? Whatever happened, I went mute. There's a lot of things that happened or happen that affect a lot of people, millions of people. And if you don't tell the truth, then that causes an issue. That's an issue for me. And that's where we get into this so far divided to where you can't even see what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
And so it's my brother is on a kick about like this is the biggest scandal of all time. I automatically, and this is my own personal bias. I just assume every politician is a liar. If you are in politics, you are in some form or way lying to me. And so therefore, when it turns out you're either, well, yeah, kind of thought so the whole time.
Right.
I just assume they are lying. And it doesn't matter if it's someone that I know personally, but if you are in some sort of political format, in some form or fashion, I automatically assume that you're a liar.
That's the topic we didn't get to last week that I was going to discuss. I call it the red pill of politics. And if you're not familiar, the term red pill comes from the movie The Matrix, which is a great movie. And honestly, I think a great trilogy. Like, I liked all of them. First one's obviously the best, but a good movie trilogy. And the premise is that one character in the movie, if you never saw it, is given the opportunity to either take a blue pill or a red pill. The blue pill means you go back to sleep, you live in bliss, you don't know how the real world is, you just continue living in the ignorance that you've lived in, not knowing what's really out there and how the world actually works. And that's how most people walking around are living. Or you take the red pill and your mind is awakened. And in this particular movie, he takes the red pill, obviously, because it would be a really short movie if he took the blue pill. Wakes up in a vat connected to a machine and basically understands that computers and machines have taken over the world and they live off of and use human bodies in this basically big simulation. And that was a big thing back in the late 90s, early 2000s, is that everyone's living in a simulation. A lot of people still think that today, but that was a big sci-fi type of idea. And so that's what the movie The Matrix is about. But he takes the red pill and he's awakened. And like, I think taking the red pill when it comes to politics is being awakened to when a politician has been in politics as long as many of these politicians have, they no longer are attached to their ideals. They're attached to power.
Correct.
I don't believe many of these politicians actually believe the ideas that they are pushing and that they're campaigning on and that we're voting for them to do. I think they believe in those ideals because that's what keeps them in power. And that's why the ideas have to be divisive. You can't go win a campaign if you're kind of a live and let live. Let's, make compromises. Let's try to work together. Let's, and you talk about soft issues. You've got to go out there and you've got to make a big deal about anything that might have anything to do with abortion. You've got to go out there and make a big deal out of anything that might have anything to do with racism. Like you've got to be able to find those hot button issues in every single current event that happens, because if you don't, you become irrelevant. And if you become irrelevant, you don't get votes. And if you don't get votes, you lose power. So you're saying what you need to say to keep yourself elected and to keep yourself in power. And I think it is very naive for us to think that our politicians actually believe in those ideals that we're voting for them to do. We still vote for them to do those ideals because those are the things they're going to vote for and push to stay in power. But for them to actually, I believe that most politicians that fight like cats and dogs on issues and call each other's names, slap each other on the back, and get along great behind closed doors. And you see that when they get out of the office.
Correct.
You see the friendships. And we look at it and we think that's a good thing. Like they should be able to get along and be cordial. And like, I've got no issue with that. I've got no issue with George W. and Obama's being friends. But it just kind of proves a point. Or when you see Trump and Obama at Carter's funeral, slapping each other on the back and chatting it up. Like Trump and Obama. And then the things that Obama said about Trump when he was out hawking for VP Harris to get elected. And then they're sitting there like best buds at the funeral, leaning over to each other and having conversations.
Which is why Harris had such a hard time at Carter's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have nothing to add to that because that's exactly what I think.
And are there some politicians that are true believers? Yeah. I believe they don't stay in very long. And we have some politicians who have come through and have kind of fizzled out. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Is that they didn't go that far enough to keep playing the game.
I think that's what Bernie Sanders started at.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that. Like, when you watch Bernie Sanders 10 years ago, that's what he was. And that's what he believed. And that's how he ran his campaign. That's how he talked to his people, all of those things. But now he just looks like everyone else.
Flying around on a private jet.
Yeah, that's been in the news lately, but he's been doing that now for years.
Right.
And so it doesn't.
It just, when pushed on it,
right.
His response was, what am I supposed to do? Like fly commercial? Like, are you crazy?
Yeah, but he's not wrong, right? Bernie Sanders is not wrong.
Yeah.
Like he's not in that statement of saying, I can't fly commercial.
Right.
That statement is not incorrect.
Right.
But then you can't come back and say I'm pushing against the oligarchy whenever you are the part of that in some form or fashion.
Right.
Which is fine. I don't want you, who is a very powerful senator in the United States government, flying on Spirit Airlines.
Yeah.
I don't.
No.
And you shouldn't have to do that.
Right. But
don't come out and say the things that you've been saying.
And his voters can reconcile in their mind that they can grab their pitchforks and torches against the oligarchy, listening to a guy who is a member of the oligarchy as it exists.
And I don't think the term oligarchy as we have defined it in the past is exactly what he's defining it as, an oligarchy of the past. He's talking about the Vanderbilts, the Rockefeller groups. And he's incorporating Trump and Musk and those people into that because he sees those people as wealthy people. I'm not calling the oligarchy that. My definition of an oligarchy is anybody who's been in power for more than 10 years.
Yeah. And is well off and rich. That was a conversation I had with someone is they're like, no, Trump and Musk and these tycoons of industry are the oligarchy. And I'm like, they made their money owning businesses. How did Bernie Sanders, Nancy Pelosi, how did they get their money?
And AOC.
Right.
And Barack Obama.
Lifelong politicians.
The Bush family.
Yes. How do they get their money? Bush's had oil.
Well, but how did they grow that money?
That's true. Daddy's been in politics. That's Connecticut.
And so, yeah, it's frustrating. Now, is it the biggest scandal of all American history? In my opinion, no. Just to list a few. MK Ultra 1953. Huge scandal that involved multiple generations of people. The Tuskegee... I practiced that all day. The Tuskegee syphilis study, where they literally injected syphilis in people in the Indian tribes. Black Wall Street massacre of 1921. I didn't even know that happened until 12 months ago.
Tulsa?
In Tulsa, yeah. Where they put firebombs on the essentially the black communities in Tulsa, Oklahoma. No idea. I have a book. If somebody wants to read it, it will be an eye-opener. Okay? We talked about this last week. It's not on the list, but Diego Garcia. The reason why we even have that little Anatole, that was a cover-up, and that was a scandal. Okay, and then now, talking about presidential gaffes and presidential acts that were horrific. The Indian Removal Act, 1830, right? Andrew Jackson, whose portrait is hanging in the presidential Oval Office right now.
Yeah.
I kind of have a problem with that. But
yeah.
That's a whole
That's not one of the ones I would have hung up, and that is the president's choice.
And true. Korematsu versus the United States, when we put all the Japanese in internment camps in 1941 through 1943. Those are my list. So I was asked, is this the biggest scandal of all time? It might be way down the road when we get all the facts and all the information comes out. Maybe. But at this moment, it's not in my top 5.
Yeah, I think I would define scandal differently. Like when you talk about the Indian Removal Act and with Japanese internment camps, I define those as atrocities. And so when you talk about like presidential scandals, the big one comes to mind is Watergate. So everything since then that's been a scandal gets gate as a suffix attached to it from Watergate, which was a hotel,
right?
It still is a hotel in D.C., where they broke into the DNC office. Nixon did to try to win the election. And so I liken this to Watergate because it is a scandal that was trying to keep a president in power and trying to sway a presidential election.
Will Biden gate as a collective group, okay, with what, I don't know how much, it's not on the list because it's still too new, right? With what Kash Patel said yesterday in his FBI with the FBI director, as the FBI director, what he said yesterday, it hasn't all come out yet. Okay. Now, will what has happened in all of Biden's presidency turn into a Biden gate? Maybe. Will it may become the biggest collective scandal of all presidents of all time? Maybe. But it's too early.
I think when it comes to actual making of a president and elections, it's going to be up there in my mind. Part of me thinks that everything won't come out until everyone involved with it is dead and gone.
Yeah.
Because if it were to come out, if somebody were to write a book tomorrow just outlining every single thing that was done cloak and dagger style behind closed doors during that administration, not just the cover up of Biden's not only mental capacity but his health, half the country wouldn't believe it if you put that book out today.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So half the country would lay into it, and a lot of them would say there's more that it's not even talking about, and then the other half of the country wouldn't even believe it. You've got to have time to pass, and then someone can really chronicle all of these things, and we can absorb that as a nation collectively, not political party-wise.
Correct.
And say, okay, yeah, this is pretty bad.
The Twitch is mirroring what we're saying.
So they released some of the special prosecutor, her, for Biden's documents, his document gate, his document scandal. Trump had one too, documents at Mar-a-Lago. They released some of those tapes today, and then also that, because her was the one that came out and said, I can't prosecute him because he doesn't have mental capacity. Right. And that let off a firestorm because it was when he was still in the race. It was before the election. And people said, how could you say he doesn't have the mental capacity to stand trial? And like they went against him, and like they spent all their time refuting that.
And that's when the press secretary came up and was like, I can barely keep up with him myself.
Yeah. But now that they've released the tapes, and I'm just going to play a little bit of it, like we won't. Prosecutor asks a question about where Biden stored some documents, and he gives an answer, and this segment's like 4 minutes long. We're not going to go anywhere near that, but here's just a little touch of Biden's response to that question.
Sorry to the Twitch, you can't hear this just yet. We're working on it.
Yeah.
But tonight you won't be able to hear it playing.
So during this time, we were living in Chambers Road, and there were documents related to the Penn Biden Center or the Biden or the cancer shot or your book. Where did you keep papers that related to those things that you were actively looking at?
Well, I don't know. This is what, 2017, 18, that area?
Yes, sir.
Remember, in this time frame, my son is either been deployed or is dying.
Talking about his son, Beau Biden, who passed away in 2015.
And right prior to that, it says 2017.
Yeah, he confirms that it's during 2017.
And so it was, and by the way, there were still a lot of people at the time when I got out of the Senate that were encouraging me to run in this period, except the president. I'm not a mean thing to say, but he just thought that she had a better shot of winning.
And so he's saying that, he says, when I got out of the Senate, there were a lot of people encouraging him to run for president, which is true back before Obama ran. That's how Biden became his vice president. But then rolls that forward and says the president wasn't encouraging him because he thought she, being Hillary Clinton, had a much better shot to win. So going back and forth on kind of timeline and dates, but he's basically asked the question is, where did you store documents? And so far he said, you've got to remember, this is when my son was either deployed because he was a soldier or dying, either one, which had happened before that. And then he talks about when he left the Senate, which was in the early 2000s.
President than I did. And so I hadn't at this point, even though I'm at Penn, I hadn't walked away from the idea that I might run for office again. If I ran again, I'd be running for president. And so what was happening though, one month ago died, May 30th, 2015 he died. I think it's 2015.
I'm not sure the months are, but I think that was.
Yeah.
That's right, Mr. President.
And what's happened in the meantime is that Trump gets elected in November of 2017? 2016. All right. So, 2017 here.
So that continues on for another 3 minutes, and then the prosecutor asks him to take a break, and he says, I don't want to take a break. I want to keep going. But the next 3 minutes, we could listen to it. You can go pull it up. It's out there. You can listen to it. Every major news media outlet has it. There's just a lot of ums and what do you mean and not being able to put his thoughts together to answer the question of where he had these documents from, these classified documents. And here's the thing, like, you can take any grandpa across the country that would answer the question that way.
Yeah.
If they're sitting in front of a prosecutor.
Yeah.
That can't be the president of the United States. That's when he was in office. That's when he was president, when he's speaking right now. That interview happened while he was president of the United States. The one that they have to wake up in the middle of the night to protect our country. Like, that's where the problem is. I'm not bashing an old guy at all. Like I say, my problem is not with Biden. My problem is with the people who were with him like this day in and day out and still kept him in that chair and tried to put him in it again.
I think it goes back to what I said last week. Anybody who's lived with, around, or had a parent, grandparent at our age, or, I mean, I don't have a parent but a grandparent that just mumbles around like that, you're like, okay, like, let's make sure we keep an eye on that, but not the president of the freaking United States. And I guess that's why, too, like, I knew that when he won, that it was going to be rough. And so I guess I was like, well, I guess let's just hang on for the next 4 years and see what happens. So that's kind of where, like, jumping back up to the beginning of this part of the conversation. I just assumed that everybody was lying.
Right.
So I had zero expectations. Unlike the current administration, the expectations are pretty high for me. And like, right. That's why we kind of sound like MAGA bros or Trump bros, because like my expectations are high. And so far he's met them.
Right.
And my expectations for Joe Biden, former president, was zero.
Right.
So for me, it's not that big of a scandal because it's like, kind of what I expected.
Yeah, just to reiterate, like, I feel sorry for the guy, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
Like, that's a rough thing to say, and people will disagree with that. But for him to be put in that position, and I'm sure he wanted it. He didn't want to drop out of the race. But, like, Grandpa doesn't want to give up his car keys either. Right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like,
it's no different.
It is no different. And
the difference is you're taking the keys to an 86 Oldsmobile, not the nuclear warheads.
That's a great way to put it. And the people who are at fault here are the ones who were with him and knew this and did nothing about it. Because they're the ones who put our country in that situation, not Joe Biden.
And that's why you kept seeing those who were, I think it was Mike Johnson, right after Trump was elected, was like, I couldn't even get a conversation with him. And that to me that was a big issue at the time. We talked about it. But now you see why. Yeah. And now you see why that special prosecutor, who is probably a decent human being,
I wish I would have keyed that up, because that would have been a good follow-up interview. We played it before in a different podcast, but it's whenever Mike Johnson basically had to threaten to go to the press because he kept going to Biden saying, or Biden's people, I need to meet with the president. I'm the Speaker of the House. I need to meet with the president. The Speaker should be able to have access to the president. Our country has threats. We have issues that need to be discussed. And they give him the runaround. He said, I'm going to have to go to the press and say that the president's people are keeping the Speaker of the House from meeting with the president of the United States. And they said, okay, you can talk to him. And that's when he met with him, they couldn't even get around to the subject that he needed to talk about because he just wasn't there.
And I think, too, Trump has handled this very delicately. He's done a good job of that. Yeah. Now, Donald Jr., he came out fighting today. Again, it's still pretty new, so I haven't been able to do a whole lot of reading on it, but I mean, I think that's why part of it, when you watch the debate, okay, and you watched President Biden at the time standing up there just mumbling, and Trump at one point goes, I don't even know what he said.
I don't think he knows what he said.
And it's like, he wasn't wrong.
Right.
And he wasn't wrong.
And honestly, when you're on a debate stage with somebody, that's one of the nicest way to put that. I really hope, and I don't know, we're recording tonight. This news just came out today.
May 19th is what today is.
Right. I really hope Trump just tweets well wishes and leaves it at that.
He did. He did that last night.
I saw he did that, and I hope he leaves it at that. Because you have your dogs out there to come in and fight against the DNC and the people who did this. Trump does not need to do that to Biden in this conversation. No one does. But yeah, it is serious.
And it's just sad. It's so sad. It's so sad. Yeah. As a politics aside, human and human, it's sad. And it's one of those things where it's like, you don't want to, it's like when Grandpa makes an angry statement, you're like, I can't fight Grandpa. You know what I mean? Because well, that's just Grandpa's angry stuff. Except for that Grandpa had the key to the nuclear warheads.
That was President of the United States.
Yeah, I don't.
Tell me that guy knew every pardon that he issued at the end of his presidency.
No way.
Mm-mm.
No way. And that's why again, that's going back to the scandals thing. The long term, this may be the biggest scandal all of American history. Right now, it doesn't come close to those because we're still 20 years away from finding out all of the information because some of it's probably still classified.
Birthright citizenship went to SCOTUS this week. Did you pay attention to any of that, or should I give a recap?
Go for it.
I should give a recap.
I paid attention to it, but I want you to recap first.
So, when Trump took office, one of his initial executive orders was to end birthright citizenship, which basically says if you're born in the U.S., even if your parents are not citizens, then you automatically have United States citizenship and all the rights and privileges that come with that. So, with that, you have, birth tourism, people who get close to having a baby and come into the U.S. just for the purpose of having the baby in the U.S. for a couple of reasons. One, just so their child has the rights and privileges of being a U.S. citizen. Also, for the benefit of now they're not going to deport a U.S. citizen and they need someone to take care of that new U.S. citizen, so mom gets to stay too. And that's where the term anchor baby comes from, that gives you an anchor in the country. So that's been the practice, and there are Supreme Court cases and precedent that back that up. But what really came into the spotlight was the 14th Amendment, and there's a key clause in the 14th Amendment that talks about citizenship, which came about after slavery. But that key clause says, under the jurisdiction of, which needs to be interpreted, by the court. Many people who don't believe in birthright citizenship for non-citizens say that subject to the jurisdiction of means that the parents are citizens. So when you're born in this country, you are a citizen if your parents are, to use the words of the 14th Amendment, subject to the jurisdictions of that state where they live and are also a citizen. Other people interpret that to be they're just in the jurisdiction, in the boundaries of that state. So that's something to be interpreted, and that's not what was before the Supreme Court. Trump's lawyers, the Solicitor General, the case they took to the court was that these lower courts who are ruling against this executive order and giving injunctions against this executive order that Trump issued do not have authority to give that injunction nationwide. They only have the authority to give that injunction to the plaintiff that is before them, which is an interesting issue because on the whole, the majority of the Supreme Court and the majority of lawyers and solicitor generals on both sides of the aisle, Biden people and Biden himself, did not like these lower courts striking down their rulings across the country either. No one has really liked that for a lower court who is a single person appointed for life as a judge, being able to strike down what the President of the United States issues as an executive order.
Right.
They see that as an issue of separation of powers, where one judge can do that. So we can just establish that, in general, it's a big, broad generalization. Both sides of the aisle don't like lower court judges doing that. But the New Jersey Attorney General is the one who brought the case and argued before the Supreme Court against the Trump executive order, representing like 11 states or so. Said this creates an interesting conundrum because in New Jersey, this has been ruled unconstitutional. So when someone passes over the border of New Jersey, do they gain their citizenship? Versus if they leave, they lose their citizenship. And so it brings to mind the question of you can't have, when it comes to federal things like citizenship, you can't have different laws all across the country, which is what, in my opinion, the 14th Amendment was about. Because there were southern states saying that these people could not be citizens.
Dred Scott.
Right. So that brings an interesting point too, but what the more liberal justices on the court, Sotomayor, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Kagan, all said against this was they were upset that Trump's Solicitor General brought this type of argument before them instead of bringing what they call a merits-based argument about birthright citizenship. So the Trump administration did not go to the Supreme Court saying, we're going to bring the issue of birthright citizenship before the Supreme Court. They went to the Supreme Court and said, we're going to bring the issue of a lower court being able to issue an injunction that is valid outside of their jurisdiction. And it's a smart move. They didn't like it because if the Supreme Court rules against them, then they haven't lost anything. But if they rule for them and they bring it on the merits of birthright citizenship, then the whole thing is dead in the water. So I don't know how the court is going to rule, but the issue is that Trump issues the executive order, plaintiffs sue, saying it's unconstitutional, lower courts rule against it and say it is unconstitutional. But it takes a plaintiff, then it takes the person who is ruled against, which in this case is the Trump administration, to take that further. Like the plaintiff in New Jersey who just won the case and gets to keep their citizenship doesn't have anything to appeal. They just won their case at a lower court. Yeah. But if they bring that whole issue to the Supreme Court, then it affects more than just the person and there's lots of others as well. But the person in New Jersey who got to keep their citizenship. So a court doesn't issue their rulings until after the summer. They hear all the arguments and deliberate, and they usually will give them out sometime after they hear arguments and sometimes right at the beginning of October before they leave for their session for the year. You see a lot of Supreme Court decisions come down in the early fall for that reason. And I don't have a crystal ball, and this is not a Supreme Court podcast, but all the things we are not. But what I think, I don't know how the court is going to rule on this, because I think what they're going to rule is we don't like the way that the Trump administration brought this case, and they need to bring us this case on the merits of birthright citizenship and just put it to bed for good, because we cannot have. But if anything happens, I think they could come down and rule that the executive order at the lower court stands, because you can't have different citizenship laws in different jurisdictions across the country. But then are they upholding all lower courts putting down injunctions and saying that when a lower court Because a lot of when the Supreme Court rules on something, it is a blanket ruling. Like it has consequences. We talked about last week, like this butterfly effect. When the Supreme Court rules, many times it has this butterfly effect of where it affects other things. So if the Supreme Court rules in favor of New Jersey, this, you know, these states that have brought this suit against the Trump administration, then does that mean that they are affirming lower courts having the ability to put injunctions on the entire country and not just jurisdiction, which they don't like in general?
I wonder if they'll just stay the decision. I wonder what the constitutional question will be, because they don't hear the argument until Thursday. So
They've already heard arguments.
Was that last Thursday? Because it says here in this article.
Yeah, I was listening to it. Bingo. Which I did not know, honestly. I didn't think they allowed any of those things to be recorded.
Yeah, it's live stream,
But
it's not video. There's no video.
No, right, just audio.
Which, by the way, if you really want to listen to something boring, you think C-SPAN is boring?
Sometimes it's exciting.
Sometimes but you have to be tuned in. It's not something you can just put in the background, in my opinion.
Yeah. I didn't know this existed. I'm sorry, not this case, but when they did the TikTok decision, I was hearing and listening to those arguments whenever they made that decision. So that's when I was like, oh my gosh, listen to all these.
Well, I just think that I think the intention of the amendment, which is the 14th Amendment, was meant as people who were brought over here forcefully. When you are not coming over here by force, but you're coming here illegally, that is a totally different question than what was trying to be answered with the 14th.
Right.
So, if we're putting ourselves in the shoes in 1860, 1870, I can't remember exactly what year that was passed, then to me, this is a totally different constitutional question than what was trying to be answered. So if I'm thinking through this logically, to me, they should say it's up to the states. But then the problem is, I'm just talking through this too. If the problem is this is a national problem, because when they brought those people here and put them on airplanes and took them to different parts of the country, different states have different laws based on their immigration policy. So, I think they're just going to push it back down. That's what.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Supreme Court does. But I think if you take a step back and say, putting our politics aside and this executive order and anything that I may feel politically or personally about immigration, I think a rational person could say it is ridiculous to think that just because someone walks across the border and has a baby, that child is a citizen of.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And the name of the what is it called? The name of the sign. God, brain is already dead for the night. The presidential action. What's it called?
Executive order.
The executive order is protecting the meaning of the value of American citizenship. So when the phrasing of that, to me, says, going back to the 14th Amendment, is that they're taking and bastardizing the term citizenship.
Right.
And they're demeaning that value.
Right.
So,
if someone with no ties to this country can just come in here and have a baby, and then their child is a citizen of this country, like that.
That opens up a whole nother can of worms, which is what the
And
problem we've had for the
I
last
think
8
just
years.
A rational person can step back and look at that and say, that's not the way it should be. Like, I don't know exactly how you flow that answer through, but that's not the way it should be.
So here's a question, and for those who are, because I think you and I are on the same page on this. If I go to France on a vacation, and I'm there on a vacation visa, whatever it's called, and my wife has a baby there, are they French citizen?
I don't think so. Most European countries either don't have it or have gotten rid of it. We covered this whenever we covered the executive orders early on when, in January when Trump was inaugurated. Many countries that have had it before, many countries don't, but many who have had it before got rid of it.
Yeah, to me, this seems simple. And maybe that's ignorance. And maybe that's one of those things that ignorance is bliss, just like I think all politicians are corrupt and lie. And it doesn't seem that complicated. So therefore, I just kind of push it to the side of my brain because it's like, yeah, I'm going to pay attention to that, but I think that it's going to... to me, that doesn't follow the lines. What Trump did is correct. What happened prior to him taking office and this birthright citizenship being taken advantage of needs to be fixed. However, you have to be very careful about how you fix it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so just to throw out, because we always hear from the more liberal side, we should be more like Europe. So this is how the United Kingdom does. If one parent is a citizen or legally settled in the country, or if a child has lived in country for 10 years, that they can be a citizen in the UK. In France, since you brought that one up, if one parent is a French citizen or born in France, or upon the 18th birthday if you've lived in France at least 5 years since age 11. So you got to have at least one parent as a citizen, which I can agree with that.
Yeah.
I can totally agree with that.
Agreed.
And, or, like you mentioned France, from the age of 11 to 18, you've lived in the country at least 5 years. Then you can be a citizen as a child. It's 5 years.
And just like I said,
And the UK's 10 years. So,
Yeah.
put some skin in the game, come be a part of our country, be here, and then but just walking across, like the way we're set up, you can walk across the border, you get citizenship, and then you can immediately leave or do whatever you want, but you retain that citizenship.
And I don't believe
with
that
no interest in our country.
Anyone believed at any point prior to 4 years ago that we would just have an open border.
Yeah.
And now a problem has been created because they were trying to bring so many people in for whatever reason. So you're starting to see this unintended consequence or intended consequence, depending on where you fall.
Right.
The Twitch says it's been a longer issue than just 4 to 8 years. But I agree. I agree with the Twitch. But it's just been pushed to the forefront because of the mass immigration that we had because of the open border policy. I mean, when you're talking like...
Well, and it's one of Trump's signature issues is immigration.
Correct. Which is, again, goes back to what I said at the very beginning of the podcast. I'm holding him to a higher standard. So if this is something that's come to the forefront. And his campaign was run on it. Maybe not specifically to fix birthright citizenship, but to fix the immigration. Trying to wait to see if you were going to add any more to it or...
No.
So Zelensky got stood up.
Yeah.
Like a blind date.
We said last week, or at least I said my thought was they would get to the room, but the egos would not allow them to stay in the room. And apparently the egos didn't even allow Putin to show up for the meeting. But Trump had a call with him today and said it went great. Very productive call.
Very productive meeting.
Put it out on Truth Social.
I liked everything he said.
I've seen a lot more pro-Ukraine stuff recently, and I think that's because it's in the news and because Trump has pulled back from just providing aid, carte blanche, military aid like that. But I've seen a couple, and it equated a section of the East Coast, or like California, to like the size of the area that Ukraine is being asked to cede over to Russia. And I kind of thought to myself, like, well, those people, we could give that up. It'd be okay.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, like, what do you want to do about it? That, I have a real problem. One of my pet peeves, and I'll just share this with the pod. One of my pet peeves are people who can't work things through in their mind to the end.
Right.
They just want to sit back and complain, well, the United States has to do something. Russia's taken away Ukraine's land. Okay. Follow that through. The United States has to do something. What would you like us to do? Well, we've got to send money over to Ukraine so they have, okay, we did that.
Didn't work.
Didn't work.
It hasn't worked.
Hasn't worked. Well, we got to, hey, you talk about putting U.S. boots on the ground in Ukraine to defend Ukraine against Russia. You want to go into war with Russia to help a country that's not us and a people that are pretty okay with just being Russian. Follow it through to its logical end. And if you're one of these people that's like, we've got to help Ukraine, we've got to send our troops over to Ukraine. Like, okay, we'll strap up and head over there.
And I like what Trump said during the campaign. I just want people to stop dying. And that's kind of where I stand on this. And that's kind of where I stand on all of the conflicts at the current moment. It's like, we just need to stop fighting each other. And we can't keep interjecting ourselves into a conflict that is not ours. Right. I'm not saying that won't have consequences down the road, because it likely will.
Right.
But right now, there doesn't seem to be a foreseeable end in the way that the conflict is going, in the direction it's going at the moment, and has been going for the last 2.5 years.
Right. And we have certain obligations. If Ukraine was a NATO country, we have certain obligations with those countries to protect and defend them as they do for us, which is a long-standing agreement since the World Wars. And really since the Cold War. And NATO was prominent in the Cold War fighting against Russia. Right.
But the problem that I have is it can't just be us. We can't keep footing the bill.
Right.
We can't. It's impossible to do because of spending and various of other reasons that we've discussed.
Well, every other country seems to be just so okay with the United States, these aren't actual numbers, but as an example, the United States will send 500 troops and Canada will send 5 and the UK might send 10, but we're footing everything.
Right.
Why?
Both money-wise and troop-wise.
I'm not a world's policeman type.
Me either. Me neither. I've never been that. I've always thought that I wasn't. I watched the killing Osama bin Laden on Netflix. Watched that this week. I'm still processing what I watched because, one, I gained mad respect for Obama and how he handled that. I did not realize, and this, I'm going to go back to what we were just talking about, but I did not realize that when they found Osama bin Laden, they were not sure it was actually him. All they had was an image, a satellite image, a drone. It looked like a drone footage. They're showing you live footage of him walking, and they were doing the shadow cast against other things that they had seen. And so mad props to him for taking care of business. Mm-hmm. Now, there was one thing that I thought about, though, because when he takes office, one of the guys that's being interviewed from the CIA, they show a clip of Obama and Bush in the Oval Office, and they shut the door. And then they come out later, and Obama's face is completely different than when he walked in. Okay? Which I would imagine, and Trump talked about that on Rogan. When you walk in and you're kind of in the aura of the Oval Office, and then it kind of just all hits you, all the things that are about to happen. They didn't say this in the Netflix documentary, but I can't help but wonder if what Bush talked about when they were about this particular topic, I can't help but wonder if he didn't tell him, we have to find him in some form or fashion.
Right.
Well, when they find him, they show Obama they tell him the plan, they tell him what they're going to do, and he says, don't tell anybody. He tells this to the CIA director, and there's 2 other people in the office. He says, I need to think about this. He goes upstairs, and I wonder, this is a complete not fabrication, but a complete idea that I had. I wonder if he called Bush.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he ran it by him. And again, we'll never know that.
Right.
We'll never know that. But I can't help but wonder if he didn't run it by him.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we have these conversations about like Ukraine and Russia, like I can't help but wonder like who was Biden talking to get this advice?
Mm-hmm.
Or obviously now we know because of the prior conversation we had about 10 minutes ago, he wasn't coherent, but who was talking to whom in the room?
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder if Trump is having those same conversations with Zelensky and Putin at the same time, saying, look, guys, we got to figure this out. You want this? He wants this.
Mm-hmm.
You want this? He wants this. And just like as he's done in the Middle East right now, something will come forth of that.
My crystal ball for Russia and Ukraine says that Zelensky will have to step down for this to get resolved. Putin's not stepping down. He's been there way too long. Zelensky is not going to give enough ground for this to be resolved. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think you're going to have Zelensky because we can't threaten him with anything else. That's it. Besides putting boots on the ground, that's the last thing we've got. Because if we escalate and give better weapons to Ukraine, we're just putting ourselves in the crosshairs of Russia. And you're trusting that Putin's not going to pull the trigger. And I don't.
I don't either.
And then if he does, I'm not saying send missiles actually to the mainland U.S. I'm not saying he wouldn't. I'm saying if he does not, what if he does attack one of our carrier groups? And it's not a military podcast either. So there's going to be military folks out there going to be like, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't, honestly. But what I'm getting at is this, and I'll crystallize it right here. I don't trust Putin to not do something that makes us have to respond to Russia. Whether that's attacking one of our ships, one of our bases, something of that nature that does not require us to then attack Russia and then escalate this thing. Because Putin is in a corner and has been for years. And that's just my opinion. And so I think it takes a real cool cat, thankfully Trump, to say, and I mean, he said 2 weeks ago, he's like, hey, when they want to talk, they can come talk, but like we're not doing this. We're not going to play this runaround game. I think he wants peace. I think he actively will pursue it, but there is a limit to how far he's going to go.
Well,
I do trust him to keep our American interest first when he's making those decisions on what to do with two countries at war across the globe.
Yeah, that's what the Twitch just said. Trump is going to buy economic prosperity for Russian to end this war. And I think that's right.
You can't do anything else.
And that was the whole...
They've been isolated since they went to war. Almost immediately after they attacked Ukraine, we cut their SWIFT code off. They're isolated.
He had the North Korean.
Yeah.
And then they got addicted to porn.
It's another topic.
But I think that was the whole, also, like transitioning, I think that was also the whole point of him going to the Middle East.
Yeah.
Peace through strength.
Yeah.
And that was the message that he sent. I want to play the Senator Kennedy clip about Qatar. You have that queued up?
No.
Oh. Well, basically Kennedy comes on Fox News.
I thought it was too short, but it was funny.
No. It's very funny because he's not wrong.
Not wrong.
Right? He equated...
Senator Kennedy does not have a Buc-ee's.
No, he does not.
So that's why he was able to say what he was able to say. I should have brought it up.
So Senator Kennedy basically said, I trust Qatar like I trust a trucks or a roadside bathroom.
Yep.
They're there when I need them, but I don't trust them at all.
Right.
And I'm not quoting him exactly, but that's pretty close. So I agree with exactly what Kennedy said, Senator Kennedy, from Kentucky. Is that right?
Louisiana.
From Louisiana. I mean, he's right. As long as it's there and as long as I need it, we can take advantage of it. Now, he also went on to talk about Iran. He doesn't trust them at all, not even a little.
Right.
And again, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that Trump did that I can see on the surface, I agree with. Because he talked with every single Middle Eastern country about both Iran and the Gaza situation. in Israel and Gaza situation. And every single one of them, he gained economic prosperity in some form or fashion, and we didn't have to go to war to get it. And so, like, I just think that's the way we're going to have to go for a while. We can't afford another war.
We don't need it.
Well, we don't, but we can't afford it either. Because the next war is hopefully 50, 60, 70, 100 years away, and we won't have to do it. This, by the way, this band is in 4 parts on this cigar. It's been a great cigar, by the way. I haven't ever smoked one of these before. And I don't know why they did it that way. That was kind of weird. See? On parts. But I just think that it's going to be... It's going to be hard. I think you're right. I think you're right about what you said about Zelensky. I'm not sure that Putin... I thought with Trump's convincing, Putin would meet with him. But now I think that was a little naive of a statement that I made this week. I don't think Putin will ever step in a room with Zelensky.
He can't. Zelensky can't give that land up. And Putin's not going to back down from taking it. And so it's going to have to be Zelensky steps down and then someone else steps up as the leader of Ukraine. They say, well, Zelensky got us into this mess. We'll have to get ourselves out. And then they're not the bad guy for ceding that land back to Russia. Like we said all along, I'm giving a 0.1% chance that the borders don't change when this is finally resolved.
Oh, it 100% changes.
So all of the people are saying like, they can't, no, they can. That's how things happen, and they have. And my question is, how far do you want the United States to go to stop that from happening?
No more. That's what I want.
Yeah.
No more. Economically and militarily.
It's been years. We've done sanctions. We've done diplomacy. We provided aid and weapons to Ukraine, and this is what we have. Still the same thing. What do you want to do next? If you don't like this answer, what do you want to do next?
And the people that I talk to, when I ask that, when we get to that point of the conversation, they don't have an answer.
I get a lot of, I don't know, but they got to do something. Well, that's what I mean. That's one of my pet peeves. That's not an answer. I don't know, but they got to do something.
I think too, like as I read about people who are in charge, and as I observe things on a much smaller scale than Trump and Putin, when you're dealing with people in leadership, they don't want to deal with people who are dramatically below them. And I wonder if Putin sees Zelensky as a much lower than himself.
That's what I was saying last week.
So I
can't sit at the same table with Zelensky because he doesn't see himself as an equal.
Yeah. But he can sit with the table with Trump because he sees Trump as his equal.
Powerful.
And so I don't know if there's anybody in Europe that he sees as an equal. I'm talking about Putin. Like off the top of my head, I can't think.
I think he likes Trump because of how Trump is. Right? Or not likes him, but will deal with him.
Yes.
Because he likes how he is.
And I think Trump is the same way.
I think I think Putin would respect the UK, France, Germany as established countries with established leaders who have gone to war. I think he looks at Ukraine as like, you're still supposed to be part of us.
Yes, and I think he sees China as the same way as the United States.
Yes.
I think if you were to sit those 5, China, Russia, Great Britain, France, the United States, I think if you sit those 5 down, Putin comes to the table and says, okay, what do we got to do? What do we need to do?
Yep.
But as soon as you bring in someone who he deems as lesser of a leader, he's not going to sit with them. And because he doesn't have to.
Right.
But I think that's part of it. Okay, you want to finish up with House Bill 2 or you want to do the big, beautiful update?
Big Beautiful Bill update is very short. I mean,
Okay.
we talked about what's in it last week, so go back and listen to that. It was a good segment. It got out of the budget committee.
Hold on.
All right.
The Twitch says, European leaders are a bunch of prissy, sissy boys. Trump is built different. I agree. On the surface, I agree. But I think what we're both saying is, as an established military power.
Let me back that up. I'm not even talking about their leadership. I think Putin respects them as an actual country.
Correct.
I think when Putin looks at Ukraine, he's like, "That's my little brother, Russia, over there. Come on back."
Right.
You know,
prodigal son type situation.
Yeah. Like you know, I had to give you up. You know, a while back. You know, we had a little issue with a weak leader, which is what they would say whenever the wall fell in '89, and for Russia. Now we need to get that back, and he sees himself as a strong leader who's going to rebuild the USSR. Right. I think that's honestly what is in his head and why he stayed in power.
Okay. On to the Big Beautiful Bill.
Big Beautiful Bill update. We talked about last week what it was in. So episode 28, take a look at that. Good segment. Check the show notes on the pod. It passed the budget committee. There are some very fiscal conservative hawks. We have one here in Texas, Representative Chip Roy, who did not like it, but chose in committee to vote present instead of against it so it could get out of committee. So it passed out of the budget committee with 4 Republican representatives voting present. So, okay. But it got out, and next it goes to the Rules Committee, which is its last committee in the House. It's going to hit them at 1 a.m. on Wednesday morning. Because here's the thing, government runs out of money at the end of the month, so we're trying to get this done before Memorial Day. So it goes to the Rules Committee at 1 a.m. Wednesday morning. Not expected to stay there long. It is expected to pass out of the Rules Committee based on the representatives in that committee, and then so it should go to the Senate, late Wednesday, Thursday. And if it doesn't take too long in the Senate, then we could have this thing passed, which we need to. Otherwise, we're going to have another continuing resolution to fund the government.
The only issue that I had with what I've read, now again, this is one of those very, very, very long bills, which I despise. We talked about a couple weeks ago about the Texas bills. Most of them are just 1 pages. 1 page. But the one thing that they said is that they should have to vote every 90 days or every 4th month on if we're going to raise the debt ceiling. Did you see that? I like that idea. Because then you can make changes as you need. And then, instead of making these baby steps at what we've been talking about over the last 20 episodes of incrementally making changes, you can make them a little bit quicker. So, we'll see. I think I agree with you, though. I think it'll get passed pretty.
Which, like we said last week, this is going to be huge for small business. It's going to be a very big deal, very good for small business. And there's this thing called the dynamic effect of these types of bills where you are cutting taxes. So, in effect, if you're looking at things very black and white, you're saying, well, we're cutting revenue to the government because we're cutting where the government gets its revenue from. We're cutting taxes. But the idea behind that and the dynamic effect is that when you cut taxes to businesses grow and they make more money. When they make more money, they do pay more in taxes, even if that tax rate is lower or the deductions are higher because revenue is so much higher. So putting a tax cut out there that reduces, like the QBI deduction did in 2017, taxable income to businesses 20% off the top. You would say, okay, well, that effectively brings down tax revenue, but it doesn't bring down tax revenue by that same dollar amount because those businesses now go and make more money,
right,
and could essentially pay more in taxes, but they're actually taking home more money at the same time.
Right.
Free market economy. It's not a perfect system, but it's a good one, and it's the one we've got.
So, when I listened back to the podcast last week, the Venmo PayPal thing just really, when that one passed, I thought this is the dumbest thing ever. And I'm glad, I hope that they do away with that as quickly and as swiftly as possible. Because to me, that's a direct attack on like a person that just trying to get a side hustle going.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got me thinking, like, as a CPA, do most people even claim that?
Well, they have to because it gets reported.
Oh, that's true.
That's the issue.
Well,
You're now getting a 1099-K showing how much money you took in from either Venmo or wherever. That the reverse side of that 1099-K goes to the government.
Gotcha.
So they know about it. And if you don't file it, then you get an audit. You get a letter
Word.
saying you underpaid.
I hope they don't ever audit me. I mean, not that I have $600. I said that last week on the podcast. Like, I've probably done $600 with transactions.
Now
but
it's
not,
out there. Now they've
not
heard.
as a business, though.
Now they've heard.
I don't have a business.
Yeah. Yes,
So-
it's not you.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about House Bill 2. It went through committee. It's been being listened to on the committee side or on the Senate side. The big kind of points from it, pull it up real quick, is teacher compensation. They reallocated $4.2 billion away from the allotment, which is the basic allotment, which was going to go to somewhere between $385 and $375, and the allotment came down to $55. But instead of the $380, that's what I'm going to say. I don't remember exactly what the amount was. Instead of that, it's going to be teacher raises. They're going to take that and put it directly towards the teacher raises instead of it being that 40% of that $380 allotment. Did I explain that correctly? Now, as a teacher myself, I want to specify that. Like, I agree with that. Like, instead of giving someone within the instructional group money, they're going to take that and they're going to give it directly to the teachers. I'll come back to that in just a second. Also, there's quite a bit of money, $1.3 billion in special education funding. Per student funding, it increases it only to $55. I said that just a second ago. But then the other thing that's kind of concerning, and then I'll hop back into the teacher part, is they're going to do away with the certification process and uncertified teachers under District of Innovation. Now, on the surface, we talked about this in 15.1. I don't have a problem with that. However, you have to get certified teachers in the classroom. Most districts that I have worked for use the DOI for that 12-month period to get a certified like the teacher could be certified in math, but they need a science teacher. Well, if you can teach math, you can probably teach science. Not saying you would be great at it, but you could do that. The problem is you have these very, very, very large districts that are just putting someone in the classroom that is not certified under DOI. Okay, District of Innovation. They're doing away with that by 2030. So not only are they making it harder to become certified as a teacher with some of the things that they've done over the last, say, 5 to 10 years, you're now taking away the option of school districts to being able to put at least a person with a bachelor's degree in a classroom. Again, we've talked about. So the problem that I have with this particular thing, and I'm going to wrap it back up into the teacher pay, is there was an interview last week with the superintendent of Houston ISD, who is not a certified superintendent. He's a business person. He also received quite a large sum based on teachers doing their job. Basically, the data came back very, very friendly from some of the things that he implemented. Does that mean he's good at his job? On the surface level, yes. I don't know this man. I didn't work for him, so I can't really say one way or the other. But the data shows that there's been improvement, so therefore he received an incentive, just like the TIA, essentially. But the problem is if you are an advocate for this bill as a superintendent, then you should have to also be a certified superintendent. So he's up here fighting and arguing with the teacher group that's I think that was like a committee of teachers that were being heard in the school board there. Who, by the way, Houston ISD has a TEA appointed superintendent. Okay, the socials do not like this guy.
Yeah,
came from Dallas at some point. He did not the greatest job, from what I've read. The thing is if you're going to make it harder for the districts to put teachers in the classroom and to gain that certification, then you cannot have an uncertified superintendent. Mm-hmm. So they have to be, okay? So the biggest issue that Abbott put out last year, he had the a group of people come out and do a survey of like, how can we put teachers back into it? Like, what is the biggest issue? And the biggest issue were pay, which we've talked about, and then discipline in the classroom. They've addressed the discipline with the Teacher Bill of Rights. I'm using quotes. I know you can't see me doing that on the podcast, but you can see me on the video. The Teacher Bill of Rights, which I've read through most of it. If you work at a halfway decent district, they already do. So it kind of makes it a little bit easier by just taking some of the red tape out of it.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about the teacher raises is I've worked in East Texas my entire life. I have never not felt supported by my administration. Okay. So I want to be clear about that. I've always felt supported by my administration. I've always worked for great leaders, people who do their job. However, the teachers on the front end, like if you're in year 0 to 5, you start out being paid quite a bit of money. Once you get to step 5 through 10, 15, 20, you get a very minuscule raise from that time period. And those are the people who are leaving the profession because you can leave. You may be making, it sounds like $60,000, right? That's about where, on average across the state, if you've been working in a school district for 8 to 10 years, about what you make. But I pose the question to a person who says, well, that sounds like a lot of money. If you have to be certified, if you have to have a degree, in most cases, you have to have a master's degree. Are you making that equal amount of pay?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the Federal Bureau of the Workforce, no, it's not equal. Now then they're like, oh, well, teachers only work 182 days. That's a sidebar conversation in my mind. So what the state is doing is they're essentially taking the money out of the district's hands in the $385 and putting it right into the teacher's pockets. And in my mind, they're kind of passing over the districts and saying, okay, you're not going to be able to give this to the administrators and the people in your admin office or the people who work in the office. It has to go to the teachers. Mm-hmm. Now, as an advocate for education and what's good for everybody as a collective unit, that's not the best. As an advocate for teachers who have to struggle every day in the classroom with the kids, this is a fantastic idea. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Because I am a teacher and we need a raise. But I'm also an advocate for kids. And I'm not sure yet, I haven't fully developed this idea, if this is a good thing yet. Mm-hmm. Because if you have a person that is a support staff who's not getting a raise, but they don't have to have any certification, they don't even have to have a degree, do they deserve to be treated the same way on the pay scale as a teacher? So I'm stuck, right? Because, I mean, the way that I fall in a rural district, and I've been teaching more than 10 years. So I would receive a $10,000 a year bump. Mm-hmm. You do the math, it's about $650 a month, mm-hmm. which, I mean, at this point, every little bit helps.
Right.
So on the surface, as a teacher, I like it. As I dig deeper, we need something.
Yeah. Well, and like we said, we have a bill. We have a House bill. Now we have a Senate bill. There's differences, and it's going to be interesting to see how they reconcile those and where it actually comes out at between the method of what the Senate bill is proposing with a lower allotment, but the teacher raise versus just the higher allotment.
So basically what they did is they took Senate Bill 26 and added it to the House bill and then just lowered the thing. I had a PDF file, and I told Clint before we started recording I should have printed it because I knew it was going to disappear, but I didn't print it, and I saved it on a file, and now the PDF is private, so I can't see it. But it took everything and broke it down based on the bills. And so if there has been no change, which it's out of committee now, so it can be voted on and sent to Governor Abbott's desk, I believe it's the 21st is when they can see it on the Senate floor. Mm-hmm. And then it has to be done by the end of the month. So good news, bad news. Good news is at least it's gotten out, so it will be able to be voted on. So that's good news. I wasn't last week at this time, I don't remember if we
Right.
talked about it
Right.
at all. I wasn't so sure it was even going to get out of committee.
Yeah, I said the same thing.
Now, so that's good. That's at least and they can still amend it, and they can still make some changes and adjustments. Not big ones, but they can still adjust. Like if they want to say the perfect world scenario is give the teachers the raises, which I said way back, maybe in episode 20-ish.
Mhm.
Give the teachers the raises and give the allotment.
Yeah, right,
I don't understand why you can't do both.
right.
Because those support staff, cafeteria workers, educational aides, secretary at the school,
Mhm.
I mean, those people deserve a bit of a raise as well.
Mhm.
So, I'm not sure. I want the raise. But we can't not have anything.
Yeah, we should have, by the next time we record, some type of consolidation.
My crystal ball says they'll raise the allotment, they'll double it from 55 to 110. That's kind of what
And
I
then
think.
keep the raises.
And then keep the raises. That seems to be where everyone is trending towards, but it's also it's a weird place for me as like a person who is pretty fiscally conservative in most cases. But it's like, why is this so difficult for people to understand?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, I don't want to say 15 years ago it was easy to become a teacher because it wasn't easy when I became a teacher, but it was a little bit easier back then. You didn't have to go through this as many hoops as you do now, but the pay is not across the board. It's just not.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to compare it. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I'm hoping that by the end of this week, so I said it earlier, but it's May the 19th. It's Monday, May the 19th. I'm hoping that by the end of the week we have an answer.
Yeah.
Anything big for you this week?
It's a busy week. It's one of those, there's a lot of stuff going on weeks, but also last week of school, and so everything's out of whack. You
Yeah.
got different school schedules, award ceremonies. We had kindergarten graduation tonight. And then on top of that, you still have soccer practice and all the church and all the other things that you do every other week as well. And then, my wife's teacher, you're a teacher, so all the wrap up things at the end of the year. So
Yeah. Or having to move my wife's to a new school. So same district, just a different school building.
yeah,
Fortunately, because they're moving to a new building, they're giving them boxes, crates to stack in,
Nice.
and she's a minimalist, so she doesn't have a ton of stuff in there as far as like moving stuff goes. But I don't mind. Like, I get a new bookcase out of it. I'm pretty excited about that.
that's good stuff.
Yeah, add more to my library, which. But yeah, it's a big week for us. We have graduation Thursday.
Graduation Thursday and then holiday weekend, Memorial Day weekend coming up.
Can't come soon enough.
Yep.
Have a good week.
Yeah.